Can I go back to Mamma Mia then? Just
Yeah.
Kicked off early 2000s?
2008 actually, yeah.
But it started as a blog?
Sorry, 2007. Yeah, it started as a blog. Yep, just
Because
me.
blogs was a thing.
Yeah, it was just someone writing on the internet really. And it wasn't a personal blog, so it was always going to be about, just what I wanted to write about really, what I thought might be interesting to people. Because back in that time, there were women's websites were like, they were very net specific. They were about cooking, or they were about gossip, or they were about fashion, or they were about parenting. And I was interested in all of those things, but I was also interested in news and pop culture. And every other woman I know was not just interested in one of those things. So it made sense to me to have a blog and then a website and now a media company that covers all of those things, because this idea of women's issues, it's very different looking at the world through a female lens versus women's issues. All issues are women's issues. But what we do at Mamma Mia, I guess, is look at it through a female lens, because most of the media tends to look at it through a male lens just by virtue of the fact that most media companies, in fact, pretty much all media companies are run by men. So I just saw, a gap in the market, and then I established that there was a market in that gap. And then I'd been growing an audience, but I was a one-woman operator and I was completely exhausted. And my husband had sold his business. He'd been in the liquor industry and he was looking for something to invest his time in. And he'd sold his company. And so he came on board as a co-founder after about 18 months. And he said, let's try and monetize this in the next 12 months, or because I hadn't earned a cent in 2 years, or it's time to, it's going to be time to get another job because we've got a mortgage to pay. And so he came on board and we did. We monetized it. We were profitable, I think, in that first year, which was not as impressive as it sounds, because it was just him and me and we weren't earning any money.
You were paying
there was no one else to pay.
Yeah.
So we were profitable. But then we just slowly moved into a little tiny office and slowly started hiring people. And of course, nobody wanted to really come and do this thing. The internet was still a bit untested, and we just grew from there. And now we've got about 150 people, and we're sort of a pretty big, not a small business anymore.
When two people, husband and wife, sitting there at the coffee table or whatever, the kitchen table, and I often wonder about, let's say at that stage your husband wasn't involved and you were doing your blogs. I often wonder, is a blog for some people therapy?
That's a really interesting. It was for some people. I think what was amazing about the rise of blogging, particularly the parenting bloggers of around that time, which I never was, but I was very influenced by them. It was this very flourishing way of women to communicate to other women in a way where there was no gatekeeper. So there wasn't
no edit,
and there was no one saying, well, that's interesting to people or that's not interesting to people. And there was no, is that going to be interesting to enough people to be able to monetize it through advertising? It was just women expressing how they felt about things, and it was an amazing time. It was fairly short-lived, but it was an amazing time. And for me, I wasn't interested in writing personally particularly, but I was interested in being the one. I'd been an editor for so long, and then an editor-in-chief with lots of magazines under me at ACP. And I'd been sort of managing people and teaching other people and editing other people for so long. I've spent a lot of my career climbing up the ladder because I'm very ambitious, but then realizing I don't really like it up there and climbing back down and wanting to get back to the coalface without anyone between me and an audience and just wanting to communicate directly. And that's what I love. And ironically, I'm in the process of that at the moment, again, de-escalating, coming back to the coalface where I can just create directly for an audience.
And what are the signs that you and your husband saw that either encouraged him or you or both of you to think, hang on, he's going to take on the co-founder role, and we're going to monetize this? What did you say? You had 1,000 followers?
I'll tell you exactly what it was. No, there were probably about 10,000 or more people coming every day to read what I was writing. I was doing about 6 posts a day on my own.
Per day?
Per day.
Wow.
There were thousands of comments. I was moderating every single comment. Like I had no one to work for me. It was literally me walking around with my laptop in my house. And then I had another baby during that time. But the reason that he realized there was something there is because I kept getting approached by private equity who wanted to start things and get me to run them for them. And he would come with
space.
me. Yeah. There was a big thing at the time called Daily Candy out of the US, which was a daily email that would like do a roundup of the best kind of deals and fashion things and various things. And so everyone wanted to get into this women's digital space. And so I'd get Jace to come to these meetings with me, and
Jace being your husband.
Jason Levine being my husband. And you know, we went to a couple and it was like, why on earth would we go and work for these clowns to make something for women when I know how to do this? We're doing it. Like, so that's where he was like, well, if they can see something in it. And he was starting at Harvard at the time, and he used Mamma Mia because he didn't have his business. He just sold his business before he'd started this 3-year Harvard course. And he used Mamma Mia as a model because they had to sort of plug in their business. Yeah. Not a case study, but they had to plug in their own businesses to these things they were learning. And he used Mamma Mia at the time, and it just made him see the potential there. And I was getting all these approaches, but I didn't have the bandwidth or the skills, to be honest, to monetize any of the approaches I was getting. So for a while, you know, he was managing me, and people would get me to come and, you know, they wanted me to be the brand ambassador for their whatever, and he would do those deals. And then he's like, there's a business here potentially. And he could see that I was completely burning out and I didn't have the capacity to monetize it myself. And I also didn't have a business plan. I didn't know how to do a business plan. He was like, what's your exit? You're not, and I'm like, I don't know. Rupert Murdoch will come along and buy me. And he's like, buy what? It's you and your laptop. There's nothing to buy. And I was like, I couldn't see that because I was just so caught up in it. And he was the one that's always had the vision. I've always been really good at this, and he's always been the one that can see over the horizon and been like, no, Mamma Mia needs to be a website that you edit. And I'm like, oh, no, that'll never work. Or he's like, Mamma Mia needs to – and I'm like, oh, no, that'll never work. And then he's right and he's right and he's right. So we've been a really good combination, whereas he's very much steered the business and the financial side of it and everything other than the content, and I've steered the content. And it's worked, you know, really well for 17 years. And one of the most dangerous times for any startup, and I'm much more suited to startup culture, I've realized, but he always had much bigger ambitions. And the most dangerous time for a business we knew was going from startup to scale up, because culturally it's a big shift. The people that you hire as generalists, you then move to needing specialists. It's a big risk moving up, and he managed us through that. He's been an outstanding CEO, managing through all of those rocky waters and through COVID and through, we tried to, you know, not everything we've done has worked. We tried to expand into the US. That didn't work. So we closed that down and decided to really focus here. But probably the biggest thing for us was when Facebook told everybody to pivot to video. They told publishers to pivot to video, and everybody sacked their writers, invested all this money, started making video, pivoted, and then Facebook went, oh, yeah, nah. Yeah, nah. And that was sort of the beginning of the end for the BuzzFeeds, the Vices, and they just ended up getting more and more investment, more and more needing more and more, doing bigger and bigger cap raises to fund this bigger and bigger expansion. And because we've never done that, we've always been in control of our own destiny. And that's a decision that Jason made, because he knew that, you know, and I would say, oh, how come they've got all this cap raising and we don't? And he's like, it means that we can make the best decisions for our business. So when everyone pivoted to video, we actually pivoted to audio. And that was before most people knew what a podcast was. And that ended up being a really, really good decision for us.
So just on the co-founder thing, because often people say to me, do I need a co-founder? Or some people come to me and say, I need a co-founder.
Yeah.
Because they heard someone else say that you need a co-founder.
Well, I needed a co-founder.
Well, is it better to say though, Mia, that I'm really good at this, but I'm not so good at those things. Those things are important in my business, in the business.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'll find a co-founder who can do those things. Because, you know, my dad used to always say, just always put up on a whiteboard what you're good at.
Yeah.
But equally,
what you're
be
not
honest,
good at.
what you're crap at.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And, you know, and I often say my various businesses, and I've always had my brother involved, my younger brother involved, who's a lawyer. I say, I cut, he sews. And you know, because he's really good at stitching things up, making it really nice and neat and tidy and relevant, etc. Not in terms of content, but just in terms of structure, finances. Exits.
Every car needs a brake and an accelerator.
You do, totally. There you go.
Yeah.
So, did you, Mia, sort of recognize that your husband had those qualities?
Yes. I knew that I couldn't do – because I was just – all I knew I was really, really good at this one thing, but I was not – there was this whole other thing that not only was I not good at, wasn't interested in becoming good at it.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't a good use of my time doing this thing that I didn't understand or wasn't good at. And so for me, not only did Jace have skills that I didn't have in terms of business and finance, but he also had a different mindset because I have a low boredom threshold and a high appetite for risk. He is more cautious, and I think that has been in a business. If you just have unharnessed ambition or unharnessed risk appetite, that's really dangerous.
Especially if both of you have
risky.
that.
Yeah, you can't. And so I think, you know, the best partnerships, and I've always said, you know, I ran this whole course part of the business for many years called Lady Startup, which is about helping women start businesses. And about the co-founder thing, I would always say exactly what you've said, which is either partner with someone who has different strengths to you or hire if you can afford to. And the problem is that most people, their co-founders will be like a friend or a sister or something. And I had, you know, they'll say, oh, this is my co-founder. We're really different. Like I'm this and shit. And it's like, your differences are like this.
Yeah.
You need differences that are like this, like where you're really, you know, you look at some of the most successful partnerships in Australian business, Nikki and Simone Zimmerman.
Yeah.
You know.
This is in a clothing brand.
The Zimmerman sisters, yeah. Nikki creative. Nicole is, I think, a lawyer by trade or maybe an accountant. And so, you know, they're very clear about who does what. And I think that's been the key for me and Jason. There's no way I could have done this without him. And, you know, he would have done something else without me, but it wouldn't have been this. So
it's an important point here, though, and I've seen this happen with people, especially husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend or brother and sister, etc., or brothers and sisters. If you have somebody like you, say with your skills and things you like doing, and with a high appetite for risk, you say, and this is sort of what you're explaining to me, you say, look, I want to do this, and he will come back and he'll say, well, wait a minute, let's just check this out and do a bit of analysis on it, blah, blah, blah.
Measure twice, cut once.
Well, would you ever get to the point where you'd say, well, hang on, don't you believe in me? You know, like, this is what I believe in. Do you ever get to the point and say, I just want you to believe in me?
Yeah.
And he's going to say, well, hang on, I do believe in you, but my role is…
Correct.
Now, how do you deal with that little – that's a small conflict there, but what would happen? Counselling, like…
It's really interesting. We've come to really – like I bristle at being held back and he bristles at me running headlong into something passionately. But what we've learned over the years is to trust each other. Like it's been proven – time and time again that my instincts when I want to run hard at something, I can't often explain. Like with podcasts, there was no business model. I just knew that it was something we had to do. And I remember getting up in a leadership team meeting and explaining podcasts, and they all kind of like laughed at me and whatever. And I'm like, no, guys, like take this. And it's like, oh, Mia, like we've got our business plan. We're doing, this is our strategy. We can't. And I'm like, And so I'll just go off and do it on my own. It's like Lady Startup. Jace walked past my office one day and I was on the floor and I was cutting things up, or maybe it was the very Perry Summit and I was whatever. And he's like, oh, babe, you know, what are you doing? And I said, and he goes, oh, what's the business plan? I'm like, I'm not sure. Like what's the revenue attached to it? And I'm like, I'm not sure, but I'm sure I'll find it. And I always have. So whether it's been podcasts, the very Perry Summit that I did, or the Lady Startup course.
Very peri as in perimenopause.
Perimenopause, yeah. So they've all been like become multi-million dollar parts of our business. But they didn't start off going, how can we make a lot of money? It's been, I've gone, walking in her shoes, what do women want? Okay. And then we find a way to make it financially viable to actually do it, because we're not a charity. We're a purpose-driven business, and our purpose is to make the world a better place for women and girls. So I'm always looking at what can I make that fulfills that purpose. So yeah, that's kind of how it works.